Okay, in this video, I'm going to walk you through how to prepare the cup that you designed in Potterdraw, how to prepare it for the casting process. So we are going to use Tinkercad for this, and I'm not going to walk through all the different parts of Tinkercad because that's in another video. But the important thing that you need to do is when you have your file the way that you like it in Potterdraw, you need to export it as a .stl file. From Potterdraw, just save it on your computer somewhere. And then when you get to the blank Tinkercad screen here, then import it here, and you'll import it as an STL, and then it'll load something like this. Now this is a little bit of a thicker version of a cup that I did in one of the other demos. And I'm starting to find that the thicker version is a little bit more solid for the printer. It makes it easier to print an infill in this in the wall here, so I'm kind of leaning towards this thicker version. But anyway, it'll import it on its side often for some reason. And so first thing we need to do is select it, and then we're going to rotate this upside down. So we're going to bring this over to 90 degrees here. And so now I have this upside down. It's a little bit lower than the plane, so I'm just going to kind of bring this up. Now, this is also a time that you should think about the scale, because you have a lot of control here in the scale. So these measurements are in millimeters, and so 84 millimeters is is a pretty small cup, especially after it shrinks. It's going to be cast porcelain, so the shrinkage is going to be high. If you want to expand the whole scale of the thing at the same time, you can use these corner things here, hold down shift, and if I slide this, it's going to just keep the proportions the same, but while making it bigger or smaller. If you just use this one here, this is just going to change the proportions of your cup, which could be something interesting that you can make different versions of a similar cup if you'd like. So I'll just set that at 88, and I'll just I'll just make it a little bit bigger. Let's just go like that. Okay. So now we have our cup that's upside down. What we're going to do here is we are going to print a casting flange. So this particular cup, because it has an angle here all the way around, it doesn't have any overhangs here for the plaster to get stuck. I could actually cast this in one piece. And so for this particular exercise, we're going to be doing one-piece plaster molds, or one-part molds. Often you could take a shape like this and you could do two parts. Like you could split this down here like that and have one part come off of this side and one part off the other side. But for this particular cup, I think we can get by with a one-part mold. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to cylinder. I'm going to bring a cylinder in here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this basically a thin wide. I'm going to bring this down to about 5. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on the corner here, and I'm going to type, let's say 125. You kind of have to eyeball this a little bit for the size that you want, because you don't want to make it so big that you're wasting plaster and making the mold heavy, but you want to have at least, maybe 1.5 inches around the rim, this part of the rim. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of position that. The one thing that I'm going to want to do at this point is that you see how there's different angles here, like there's sharp, different sides to this. I want this disc to be round, because what I'm going to do when I get to the casting part of it, or the molding part where I'm going to pour plaster, I'm going to put metal flashing around here. And so the flashing is going to bend in a circle. And so I don't want to have these little gaps here that the plaster could come down into. So I'm going to select the disc, and I'm going to bring these sides all the way up here. Okay, and so you see now that makes a round, a round disc. Okay, so so now what I'm going to do, in order to center the cup over the disc, I'm going to select this whole thing. Then I'm going to go up here to Align, and I click on Align. And what I'm going to do here is if I click this one, it'll give you kind of a preview of where it's going to move the object. So what I want to do is I want to center here, and I also want to center in this direction too. And that will give me a will center the cup on the flange. Okay, so that looks pretty good to me, 125 on this particular object. Now, 125 millimeters is not going to work if your cup is, say, 120 millimeters. So anyway, you just have to make sure you have enough room there. Keep in mind that when you go to put the flashing here, you're going to have some clay here. You're gonna use either clay or plasticine. A little bit of a kind of a coil here. So this is going to get a little bit less. So in reality, it'll be just a smidge less than this. Okay. So now that I have my my casting flange on there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise this up. I don't want to have it sinking in there too far. Okay, obviously don't want to have it sticking through the bottom like that. So I'm going to bring this up until I see the rim, and then I'm just going to kind of see that black line down there on the rim. I'm just going to tuck it just underneath like that. And maybe let's go down one more like that. Okay. So now I have this set into the casting flange here. Okay. Now, the one thing that I have found by doing this is that it's hard to get this out of the mold without anything to grab onto. So if you look at the bottom here, there's not a lot to grab onto here. So so why don't we actually do this? Let's join these together. Okay, select it and then group it. Okay, so now we have one object, and then I'm going to rotate this around so we can see a little bit easier on the bottom. So keep in mind that there's going to be plaster here. There's nothing to grab onto, and the sides are so thin, it's hard to grab onto these. So what I have found is a little trick of just, I'm going to bring a cylinder over here, and I'm going to turn this into a hole by just selecting hole here. Then I'm going to bring this up. Let's see, get this up here like that. Okay. Now I'm going to put basically some finger grips in here that I can stick my fingers in and pull the thing out. So I'm going to make these, say, about 25. Okay, that should be good. Then what I'm going to do here is I am going to then, with the object, or with the hole selected here, I'm going to duplicate this object, and I'm going to put another one right here. Okay, so it doesn't really matter if these are centered. The important thing, though, is that you have to make sure that your holes don't cut into the thing here. So let's just say I had this really long thing here, and and I had this too far down. Well, let's see here. Okay, yeah. So, and let's say I had it too close to the edge. Okay, so now that's going to cut a hole in the side of my object here. So obviously that's no good. So we just want to be careful we don't, we don't have this too big here. Okay, so we're just going to make this here. And then one way you can kind of check this too is you could actually zoom all the way inside the object like this. And it's a little tricky to let's see what I mean. It's a little bit tricky. So we're going to kind of scoot in here, and okay, so now this is a good point because you can see I don't have the other one far enough into the object to be able to cut through. See, I have this one here, but the other one is up here somewhere. And so so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out of the object here. I zoom out. Okay, and let me just kind of make sure that these are sticking in enough here to be able to see them. Okay, so let's bring this up and then kind of skirt that down like that. Okay, so now let's try that again. Let's come in here and let's see, we should see both of them. Okay, perfect. So now you can kind of see this one's a little close to the edge here. See, I don't want that. I just want to bring this in here, and I'm just going to kind of position these so that I can see, that I can be able to get my fingers in there and pull that thing out. Okay, so these holes are maybe just a little bit bigger than I need, but I do want to make sure that they're not too small. So, okay, so now that I have these holes in here, this is going to allow me to put my fingers through here and pull this out when I'm completed. So in order to make those actual holes, I need to then group this whole thing again. So I select the whole thing, group, okay, and now you can see, you always want to make sure that you can actually see through here, okay? Now I've tried this just by making one big hole here or a square, and I don't feel like, it's like you don't really have as much leverage as if you do it this way, you can just kind of pull that thing out a little easier. So so I found that that's easier. Okay, so now that now that I have that, I'm going to rotate this around again down to 180, okay, and let go. Make sure it's sitting on the platform here, and then I just kind of want to double check everything, make sure I have, don't have any holes or anything sticking through there. And then if I select it, I can roll over here and I can look at the millimeters. Now, either get yourself a ruler that has millimeters, or find a ruler and take a look at this. In the US, we're not really familiar with how long a millimeter is. So take a look at that, 95 millimeters. And then I have a flange here that's 25 or 125 by 125. So if you kind of take your ruler and just kind of make sure that your sizing is correct, you can size it in Cura as well, but I find it just easier to manage the proportions and the size here. If you're sizing it just proportionally in Cura, it's also going to change the proportion of the casting flange here. Okay, so anyway, main thing is that you have to group everything together. You have to make sure you have enough room here for your plaster. Okay, and then you have to make sure that you have designed a system to be able to get the thing out of the plaster, okay, as well as making sure that this is round, okay. So once you do that, it'll save it automatically. The next thing to do is to go up here to export and save it as an Stl file. When you have the Stl file, then you'll go into Cura and prepare it to be 3D printed. So I think that's it for this video, and just jump in there and give it a shot and see what you come up with.